Parker Mose, Wisconsin fan, Green Bay Packers fan, I think diehard for both of them. If you see this video, Parker Mose, make sure to correct me if I'm wrong on either of those accounts. He asks, can Wisconsin navigate a very tough 2025 schedule to a bowl game win or to even double-digit wins? He's essentially asking, can Wisconsin turn lemons into lemonade with their schedule? And certainly, somehow earning double-digit wins with this schedule would be the definition of turning lemons into lemonade. I mean, if Wisconsin, let me tell you something. Wisconsin wins 9 games with this schedule, we're talking about them as a college football playoff contender. They win 10, you could be looking at Wisconsin with a home playoff game. And I will tell you why. So let's take a look at this schedule here. Let me read it out to you. So they start out with some easier games. They did last year, and with how they started off, you could kind of tell, yeah, their defensive front is a little bit undersized, doesn't have a whole lot of depth to it, and their offense is just very clunky. That's why they got rid of Phil Longo and replaced him with Jeff Grimes. Miami of Ohio is who they host in week 1. They then host Middle Tennessee State University in week 2. They have to travel to Alabama in week 3, which I do not think is a guaranteed loss, but it likely will be a loss. In week 4, they then host Maryland. They get a bye in week 5, and so far this is a challenging schedule, but not impossible. Not 2024 Georgia or what we thought Florida's was going to be in the 2024 preseason or the schedule in totality that LSU played in 2019. It's not that. Or the 10-game SEC schedule that teams played in the COVID year. If you think that teams in the COVID year were strong, which I think some like 2020 Bama were, speaking of Alabama, but that's a topic for a different day. After the bye week in week 5, this is where the schedule begins to really have this toxic, poisonous, discouraging kind of hint of death, smell of death, odor of death, like sense to it. Tripping over my own words. But then again, if you told me, if you woke me up tomorrow and asked me how my day was, how my night's rest was, and I'm talking normally and I'm happy, and then you show me this schedule and you tell me that this is going to be my team's schedule next year, and if my coach doesn't win 7 or 8 games with this, he's fired and the program has to restart, you would find me stuttering and tripping over my own words and settling into a panic here. Wisconsin has to travel in week 6 to Michigan on the road. They then host Iowa in week 7. They host Ohio State in week 8, and then they travel to Oregon in week 9. They get a bye, thankfully, to rest, because then they have to host Washington in week 11, travel to Indiana in week 12, host Illinois in week 13, and play at Minnesota in week 14. My top 25 is not ready yet. It isn't. But I will tell you that Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, Illinois, and Minnesota will be on it or inside the top 30. Straight up. And you can extend that if you want to Washington and Iowa, who will definitely be top 40 teams. Wisconsin may not be top 40. A lot of preseason power ratings say they're just around that level. And yet they have to play 7 teams, all of them except for Alabama in conference, who will be projected as better than them. And an additional 2 who will be similar and who could be better than them. It's a very tough schedule. It is a schedule that I would liken to Georgia's last year, which was the toughest schedule in the nation. That is a schedule that can turn an elite team into just a great team. It can turn maybe a average or even below average or bad team in Wisconsin to a team that at the end of the year may look like 2024 Purdue more than it looked like 2024 Wisconsin. It's a tough schedule. I think Georgia last year got mentally challenged and even a little bit broken by their schedule at times. People and players talked about how their chemistry was a little bit off and the injuries piled up because they're playing tough games and it's hard to rest their starters when you're in so many close games and you're playing so many good teams that can play you close as Georgia. And that just wears on you. It challenges you. And Wisconsin isn't Georgia. So in saying that, I don't think that Wisconsin can win 10 games with this schedule. I don't. I think that they could win 8. I mean, if everything goes right, maybe they could win 9. But the issue I have is Alabama on the road, Michigan, Oregon, Indiana on the road, and then Ohio State at home, and Minnesota on the road. Minnesota has done a good job in recent years of beating Wisconsin under Fleck. Iowa has not lost to Wisconsin since 2021. Fickell has never beaten Iowa. Fickell has played Ohio State before, played Oregon before, and hasn't been able to beat those teams. So a lot of the teams he's played have faced off against him before. In his roster, he's beaten them. There's some confidence baked in there for those teams against Wisconsin. And a lot of these teams he'll be playing are projected to be better than Fickell's team, than his team. Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana, from a preseason standpoint, I think obviously are projected to be better. Minnesota likely will be from where they finished in the power ratings and how much they bring back. Wisconsin brings back 64% of their production. Minnesota brings back 62%. And combining all of those things together gives me the feeling that 10 wins would... If Wisconsin wins 10 games, you're kind of asking, well, what were the previous 2 years? Not in an angry way. You're relieved, you're happy if you're a Badger fan or even a college football fan who loves to see Wisconsin succeed. But you'd be asking yourself, well, what was the 5-7 year in 2023? What was, 7-6 in 2023? What were those? Maybe I said 2023 twice. You know what I meant, 2024 and 2023. What were those? Maybe in the same way that Nebraska could break through in year 3, Wisconsin could break through in year 3. Now, Wisconsin's schedule is much tougher than Nebraska's. I will tell you, if Wisconsin had Nebraska's schedule, and Nebraska had Wisconsin's schedule, their records actually in my book would be pretty much the same because I view these teams pretty similarly. They will beat a lot of teams who have similar talent to them because of some of the non-negotiables they bring to the table, which I like. They also won't do that hot against certain teams that are of that level, whether it's, I think, Wisconsin against maybe Indiana or maybe Minnesota, or with Nebraska, maybe, like USC or Minnesota as well. Both teams actually play Minnesota on the road. But what I will say is that I wouldn't be talking about Nebraska like they could go to the playoffs or that they could win 10 or 11 games if everything pans out, because their schedule could be that easy. For Wisconsin's, if everything pans out, you're going 8-4 or 9-3. And if half of everything pans out and half of everything doesn't, probably 5-7 or 6-6 or maybe even 4-8 is your most likely record. And at that point, you're talking about Fickell either being let go or definitely being on the hot seat entering 2026. And I think Fickell's a good coach. I do. I think he can turn this schedule into a bowl game and finishing as a top 25 team, at best maybe being a college football playoff contender, because a 9-3 Wisconsin may be in a down year record-wise where there are multiple better teams with 3 losses or multiple ACC and Big 12 teams with 3 losses, like more of them than last year, same amount or even all of them, which may or may not happen this year. We'll have to see. Then that could be the conversation. But I wouldn't even go there. I wouldn't. It's going to be hard to get in the current 12-team format as a 9-3 team anyway. And then with the schedule they have, I'd say the goal is to go bowling. Go bowling or finish with a winning record. Go 7-5. And I think that Wisconsin can navigate a tough schedule to go to a bowl game. I think they will go to a bowl game. I'm predicting them to go around 6-6. You'll see where exactly and what teams I think they'll beat and which teams I think will beat them. I do think Fickell will be able to at least survive and float with Wisconsin for another year and maybe generate some optimism. However, it's going to be very tough. I won't lie to you. And when you look at Wisconsin, they have a lot of questions at linebacker. I think this is the best QB room they've had in a while, but we said that about Tyler Van Dyke there, and look what happened to him with the injury. This is probably the weakest Wisconsin running back room I've seen in quite some time. Tight end still hasn't been figured out. They wanted Tanner Koziel, and he just didn't work out there. And then in the offensive line, I think they've recruited well there and developed well there, but they do lose some production in that group. So it'll be interesting to see how they reload. Conversely, I think this is a decent, solid, if not good, great Wisconsin wide receiver core. I think this is going to be Mike Tressel's best defensive line, and they got Preston Zachman back at safety and Nazir Corrine and Ricardo Holman at corner. So this should be a good Mike Tressel defense, and I love Mike Tressel. I think Mike Tressel is a great defensive coordinator. But it's going to be hard with the schedule they have. So yes, they can turn lemons into lemonade, but it will be a challenge, and I would temper expectations for Wisconsin beyond 6 or 7 wins